The elevator doors were closing when Diana Patrick made the worst decision of her life. Or maybe the best. She couldn't tell anymore. Her fingers slammed against the button as three men in black suits crossed the marble lobby of Kong Tower. Their eyes locked on her like predators who'd finally cornered their prey. The white dress she wore clung to her skin, soaked from Seoul's relentless rain, torn at the shoulder from where she'd ripped free from grasping hands 2 blocks ago. The USB drive in her palm felt like it was burning a hole through her skin. The doors were almost shut when a gloved hand stopped them. Diana's breath caught. She pressed herself against the elevator wall as a man stepped inside. Tall, expensive gray suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But it was his face that made her freeze. Or rather, what covered it? A sleek black visor stretched from his forehead to his chin, reflecting her terrified expression back at her like a mirror. The door slid shut, just the two of them in a glass box ascending into the sky. Through the transparent walls, she could see the 3 men below, watching the floor numbers climb. 2nd floor. 3rd floor. They'd be waiting when she got off. They always waited. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 6 months. She'd survived 6 months in Seoul by being invisible, by keeping her head down, by never making a scene. But Daniel Osei had found her anyway. He always found her. The stranger beside her stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of him, not looking at her. Professional. Detached. Like having a soaking wet woman in a torn dress sharing his elevator was just another Tuesday night. But Diana saw the way his chest rose and fell. Too controlled. Too measured. He was uncomfortable. Good. That made 2 of them. 4th floor. 5th floor. The men below were moving toward the stairwell. She had maybe 30 seconds before they calculated which floor she'd exit on and cut her off. 30 seconds to make a choice that would either save her life or end it. Diana looked at the stranger. At his expensive suit and that bizarre visor. At the way he held himself like someone who owned the building they were standing in. Someone important. Someone with security. Someone Daniel's men might think twice about touching. Before she could talk herself out of it, she grabbed his tie. The stranger's head whipped toward her, a sharp intake of breath behind the visor. She pulled him close, rising on her toes, and pressed her lips against the cold material covering his face. Her free hand went to his jaw, fingers splaying across the smooth surface like she was cradling a lover's cheek. He went rigid, every muscle in his body locked. But he didn't push her away. Through the glass elevator walls, Diana kept her eyes open, watching the lobby below. The 3 men had stopped. One pulled out his phone, squinting at the screen. His face twisted in confusion. He showed it to the others. They looked up at the elevator. At her pressed against a man in an intimate embrace. Wrong woman. It had to be. Their target was alone. Running. Desperate. Not kissing some businessman in an elevator like they had all the time in the world. One of the men shook his head. They turned. Walked toward the exit. Disappeared into Seoul's neon-lit night. The elevator climbed higher. 15th floor. 20th floor. Diana's lips were still against the visor. The stranger's breathing had gone shallow, rapid, like he was on the edge of panic. She could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. Slowly, carefully, she pulled back. His gloved hand lifted, trembling slightly, and touched the visor where her lips had been. Like he was checking if it had really happened. Like he couldn't believe someone had just crossed into his personal space without permission. The silence stretched between them, heavy and loaded with questions neither of them knew how to ask. Finally, his voice came out quiet, controlled, but underneath it, she heard the tremor. Did you just kiss me? Diana's back hit the elevator wall. Horror flooded through her as the adrenaline drained away and reality crashed in. She'd just kissed a complete stranger. Through some kind of mask. Without asking. Without explaining. She'd used him like a human shield, and he probably thought she was insane. I'm so sorry, she breathed, hand covering her mouth. I didn't mean to. I had no choice. They were going to. She stopped. Swallowed. Who are you? Why are you wearing that thing? The stranger didn't answer. His head tilted slightly, studying her with an intensity she could feel even though she couldn't see his eyes. The elevator continued its climb. 45th floor. 48th floor. You're in trouble, he said. Not a question. A statement of fact delivered in that same measured tone. Diana's phone buzzed in the small clutch she'd somehow managed to keep during her sprint through Seoul. She didn't need to check it to know what it said. Daniel always sent the same message when he was close. Found you, Day. You can't hide forever. Her hands shook. She pressed them against her dress, trying to steady herself, but it was useless. Everything was falling apart. Again. She'd been so careful. Changed her name legally using her late Korean mother's citizenship. Found a quiet job at an art gallery where nobody asked questions. lived in a tiny apartment in Itaewon where foreigners were common enough that she blended in. But Daniel had connections everywhere. The Osei syndicate didn't just operate in Los Angeles. They had roots in 12 countries, money laundering operations that stretched across 3 continents. And Daniel had spent the last 6 months hunting her like she was the only thing that mattered. Because she'd done the unforgivable. She'd testified against him. Hey besties, before we continue, do me a favor. If you're hooked on Diana's story and want to see how she escapes Daniel, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think she should do next. Should she trust this mysterious stranger? Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Daniel catches up to her. Because trust me, he's closer than you think. The elevator doors opened on the 60th floor. The top. A private penthouse that took up the entire level. The stranger stepped out first, his movements precise, calculated. He didn't look back to see if she'd follow. Diana hesitated in the doorway. Every instinct screamed at her to run. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he wanted, or why he'd let her kiss him instead of calling security. For all she knew, he was more dangerous than Daniel's men. But the elevator doors started closing, and she made her choice. She stepped into the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire space, offering a view of Seoul that looked like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. The furniture was minimal, modern, everything in shades of white and gray. But it was the details that caught her attention. UV sanitizing stations every few feet. Not a single item out of place. The air smelled sterile, like a hospital. The stranger walked to the windows, his back to her. He still hadn't removed the visor. What's your name? He asked. Diana's throat tightened. Names were dangerous. Names could be traced. Does it matter? If you want my help, yes. She studied his reflection in the window. He stood perfectly still, hands behind his back, like he was trying to maintain as much distance between them as possible even though they were in the same room. Diana, she said finally. Diana Patrick. He was silent for a long moment. Then he turned, and even without seeing his face, she could feel his assessment. Patrick. American. Korean American. My mother was from Busan. The lie came easily now. She told it so many times it almost felt true. Her mother had been Korean, but she died when Diana was 12, and she'd never mentioned anything about Busan. And the men chasing you. Diana's fingers tightened around the USB drive. That's complicated. Most things worth running from are. She laughed, but it came out bitter. You're taking this remarkably well. Most people would have called security the second I grabbed them. I don't do security. They can't help with what I have. He moved to a desk near the window, pulling out a tablet. His gloved fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. The men following you. How many? 3 tonight. But there are more. There are always more. Who sent them? Diana bit her lip. This was the moment. She could lie, keep her secrets, walk out that door, and take her chances on the street. Or she could tell the truth and hope this stranger with his sterile penthouse and bizarre visor was exactly what he seemed to be. Someone with resources. Someone with power. Someone who could protect her. My ex-husband, she whispered. Daniel Osei. The stranger's fingers stopped moving on the tablet. Osei. The Osei syndicate. So he knew. Of course he knew. Anyone who operated at this level would know about the Osei family. West African organized crime with operations in 17 countries. Money laundering, weapons trafficking, human smuggling. They'd built an empire on blood and fear, and Daniel was the heir to all of it. I was married to him for 3 years before I found out what he really did, Diana said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. He told me he ran import-export businesses, which was technically true. He just never mentioned what he was importing. And you testified against him. It wasn't a question. He'd already pulled up her information on that tablet. She could see the glow of the screen reflected in his visor. The federal case fell apart, she continued. Daniel had judges in his pocket, evidence disappeared, witnesses recanted. I was stupid to think I could touch him. She laughed again, sharp and painful. So I ran. Used my mother's citizenship to get into Korea. Changed my name. Thought maybe Seoul was far enough. It's never far enough, the stranger said quietly. Not when someone wants to find you badly enough. He understood. Something in his tone told her he understood better than most. Who are you? Diana asked. You knew this was the penthouse floor. You walked in here like you owned it. I do own it. He set the tablet down, turning to face her fully. My name is Kong Min-jun. This building is mine. The company that built it is mine. And if you agree to my terms, the protection you need will be yours. Diana's pulse quickened. What terms? Min-jun walked to a cabinet, pulling out 2 glasses and a bottle of water. He poured carefully, precisely, then set one glass on the table between them. He didn't hand it to her directly. I have a problem, he said. My company is being targeted by the Chongryong faction. Korean Chinese organized crime disguised as venture capitalists. They want to force a merger, take control of Kong Industries. My board thinks the solution is simple. Make public appearances. Do interviews. Show the world I'm a strong leader who can't be intimidated. So do it, Diana said. I can't. The words came out tight, strained. I haven't made a public appearance in 12 years. I don't do crowds. I don't do people. I barely do rooms without UV sanitization. He gestured to the visor. This is how I leave the penthouse. And even then, it's rare. Diana looked at him with new eyes. Not just wealthy. Not just eccentric. Something was broken here. Something had shattered him so thoroughly that he'd built walls between himself and the entire world. What happened to you? She asked softly. The same thing that happened to you. Someone I loved tried to destroy me. He picked up his glass, but didn't drink. Just held it like he needed something to do with his hands. 12 years ago, my fiancée was killed. A bomb at our engagement party. I was holding her hand when it happened. After that, I couldn't. He stopped. Started again. Physical contact became impossible. Crowds became torture. I rebuilt my life around avoiding both. I'm sorry, Diana whispered. Don't be. It made me very good at running a company from a distance. He set the glass down. But now the distance is a liability. The Chongryong faction sees weakness. The board sees instability. And I see everything I built collapsing because I can't stand in a room full of people without having a panic attack. Diana's mind raced, trying to understand where this was going. What does any of this have to do with me? Minjun turned back to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the Seoul skyline. I need someone to stand beside me in public. Someone who can handle the social aspects I can't. Someone who understands survival and won't fall apart under pressure. You want to hire me as what? An assistant? A fiancé? The word hung in the air between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Diana stared at his back, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? A fake engagement, Minjun clarified, still not looking at her. 6 months. You appear at events with me. Photo opportunities. Interviews if necessary. We present a united front. The board sees stability. The Chongryong faction sees an alliance with American connections, which complicates their plans. And in exchange, I use every resource at my disposal to keep Daniel Osei away from you. She should laugh. She should walk out. This was insane. She'd escaped one controlling man only to chain herself to another? Even if it was fake, even if it was temporary, everything in her screamed that this was a mistake. But her phone buzzed again. Daniel's next message was always the same. Always a location. Always somewhere close. Tonight it was an address in Itaewon. Her neighborhood. Her apartment building. He was already there. I need an answer, Minjun said. Those men will be back. They'll check security footage. They'll find this building. They'll realize you're here. And when they do, I can either tell them you're a stranger who forced her way into my elevator, or I can tell them you're my fiancé, and they need to leave before I call my lawyers. Why would you help me? Diana demanded. You don't know me. I could be lying about everything. You could be. He finally turned, and even through the visor she felt the weight of his gaze. But I watched you in that elevator. You were terrified, desperate, and you still managed to think strategically. You used your surroundings. You assessed the threat. You created a solution in less than 5 seconds. That's not just survival instinct. That's intelligence. That's desperation. Same thing, different name. He moved to the desk, pulling out a contract. Already prepared. Already printed. Like he'd been planning this before she ever stumbled into his elevator. 6 months. You live here, in the guest wing. Separate spaces. Separate lives except for public appearances. We follow a script. We maintain boundaries. And at the end of 6 months, we announce an amicable separation. You get a severance package, a new identity if you want it, and enough money to disappear properly this time. Diana looked at the contract. At the man offering it. At the phone in her hand, with Daniel's message burning on the screen. 6 months ago, she testified against Daniel believing the justice system would protect her. That had been naive. Stupid. The justice system protected people like Daniel, not people like her. But maybe this stranger with his sterile penthouse and his broken mind could do what the courts couldn't. I have conditions, she said. I'd expect nothing less. You don't touch me without permission. Ever. I don't care what the cameras need or what the script says. My body is mine. Agreed. No hesitation. Like he understood better than most what it meant to need control over your own space. I want access to a lawyer. Independent. Someone who can verify you're not putting me in worse danger. Done. I'll have my assistant send you 3 names tomorrow. Choose whoever you want. And if Daniel finds me here, if he gets past your security, I want a way out. An escape route. Money. Documents. Everything I need to run again. Minjun was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to a panel on the wall, pressing his palm against it. A hidden safe opened. Inside were stacks of cash, multiple passports, and keys. Emergency exit is through the service elevator in the East Wing, he said. It connects to an underground garage. The keys are for the black sedan on level 3. Registration is under a shell company that can't be traced to me or you. The passports are blank, but I have someone who can fill them in within 6 hours. The cash is $50,000. Is that sufficient? Diana's hands trembled as she stared at the contents of the safe. This man, this stranger, had just shown her his own escape plan. His own acknowledgement that sometimes the only option was to run. You really meant it, she whispered. When you said you understood. I told you. Someone I loved tried to destroy me. I learned to always have an exit strategy. He closed the safe, but left it unlocked. Your turn. Do we have a deal? She thought about Daniel. About the way he'd smiled when he proposed, taking her to that restaurant overlooking the Pacific. About how that smile had changed when she discovered the truth. How it had twisted into something cruel and possessive. You're mine, Day. You'll always be mine. Death is the only divorce I recognize. He'd meant it. She'd seen it in his eyes when the federal agents had dragged him away. That promise. That threat. She'd been running for 6 months. She was tired. So desperately tired. Maybe it was time to stop running and start fighting back. Diana picked up the pen. 6 months, she said. Not a day longer. 6 months, Min Jun agreed. She signed the contract. The ink was barely dry when every window in the penthouse exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow as 3 figures swung through on rappelling lines, guns drawn. But these weren't Daniel's men in their black suits. These were professionals. Military-grade equipment. Tactical gear. And they were here for Min Jun. Comment below if you think Diana just made the biggest mistake of her life. And hey, subscribe because you need to see how they survive what's coming next. Don't forget to tell us where in the world you are watching from. Min Jun moved before Diana could scream. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist, and he pulled her behind the desk as bullets tore through the space where they'd been standing. The UV sanitizing station exploded in a shower of sparks and plastic. Stay down, he hissed, and for someone who claimed he couldn't handle physical contact, his grip was iron strong. The 3 intruders landed in the penthouse with practiced precision. Their faces were covered by black masks, but Diana could see their eyes scanning the room, calculating angles, searching for targets. Kong Min Jun. One of them called out in Korean accented English. Victor Zhao sends his regards. You should have accepted the merger when he asked nicely. The Chongryong faction. They'd come for him tonight. And she'd walked right into the middle of it. Min Jun's hand released her wrist, and she immediately missed the anchor of it. He reached under the desk, pressing something. Alarms should have blared. Security should have flooded the room. Nothing happened. They disabled the building's systems, Min Jun said quietly. Too quietly. Like he was talking himself through a problem instead of facing 3 armed intruders. Cutting power to the alarms would have required inside access. Someone on my staff. Are you really doing analysis right now? Diana whispered urgently. They have guns. Yes, I noticed, but his breathing had changed. Faster. Shallower. The panic attack he'd mentioned was coming. She could hear it building in his voice. The lead intruder fired a shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Come out, Mr. Kong. We're not here to kill you. Just to deliver a message. Victor wants you to understand the consequences of refusing his offer. Diana's mind raced. 3 armed men. 1 exit that was currently blocked. Windows that were now gaping holes to a 60-story drop. And a man beside her who was actively having a breakdown. She'd survived Daniel by learning to think like him. By understanding that men like him, men who used violence as a language, they all had the same weakness. Ego. Before Min Jun could stop her, Diana stood up. Wait, she called out, hands raised. Wait, please. All 3 guns swiveled to point at her chest. The lead intruder tilted his head. Who are you? Nobody, Diana said, taking a careful step forward. Keep them talking. Keep them focused on her instead of searching for Min Jun. Just someone in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm sorry. I didn't know this was happening tonight. I'll leave. I'll forget everything I saw. You're American. The intruder's eyes narrowed behind his mask. What's an American woman doing in Kong Min Jun's penthouse at midnight? I work for him, she lied smoothly. Translation services. I was just delivering some documents when you came in. Please, I have a daughter. She's only 4. I just want to go home to her. The lie about a daughter was calculated, humanizing herself, making them see her as someone's mother instead of a witness who needed to be eliminated. It worked. The lead intruder lowered his gun slightly. Check her, he ordered one of his men. The second intruder approached, and Diana forced herself to stay calm as he patted her down. His hands were professional, efficient, searching for weapons or recording devices. He found her phone, the USB drive. What's this? He held up the drive. Work files, Diana said. Translation documents. Nothing important. He pocketed it anyway. Of course he did. That drive contained everything she'd copied from Daniel's files before she ran. Financial records. Transaction logs. Evidence of the Osei syndicate's entire money laundering operation. And now the Chongryong faction had it. The intruder finished his search, nodding to his leader. She's clean. Then go, the leader said to Diana. Take the service elevator. Don't look back. Forget you were here tonight. She should run. Should take the exit he was offering. But Minjun was still behind that desk, and she could hear his breathing, ragged and desperate. If she left, they'd find him. And whatever message Victor Zhao wanted delivered, it wouldn't be gentle. Diana had spent 3 years watching Daniel hurt people who couldn't fight back. She'd stood by, complicit in her silence, because she'd been too afraid to act. Not anymore. I can't do that, she said. The leader's gun came back up. Excuse me. I can't leave. Because I lied. I don't work for him. She took a breath, committing to the insanity of what she was about to do. I'm his fiancée. We just got engaged tonight. And if you hurt him, you're not just sending a message to Kong Minjun. You're sending it to me. To my family. To my connections. What connections? The leader laughed. You're a translator. I'm Diana Patrick. My mother's family has been in Busan for 3 generations. My father's family has been in import-export in Los Angeles for 20 years. Let them interpret that however they wanted. Let them assume connections that might not exist. You touch him, you start a war you're not prepared for. It was a bluff. A desperate, ridiculous bluff. But she learned from Daniel that sometimes the threat was more powerful than the action. The 3 intruders looked at each other, calculating, reassessing. Victor didn't mention a fiancé, one of them muttered. Because we just announced it tonight, Diana said. Or we were going to, before you crashed through the windows. The leader stepped closer to her, and she forced herself not to flinch. If you're lying, then you'll know where to find me. But if I'm telling the truth, and you hurt my fiancé, Victor Zhao will have bigger problems than a rejected merger. The standoff stretched for an eternity. Then the leader lowered his gun. Tell Kong Minjun that Victor expects an answer within 48 hours. Accept the merger, or next time we won't be so polite. He gestured to his team. We're leaving. They retreated to the broken windows, hooking their rappelling lines back up. Within seconds, they were gone, disappearing into Seoul's night like they'd never been there. Diana's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, adrenaline crash hitting her like a freight train. Behind the desk, Minjun emerged slowly. The visor was still in place, but she could see his hands shaking. His entire body was trembling. You just claimed to be my fiancé to armed intruders, he said. His voice was strained, barely controlled. We signed the contract 3 minutes ago. I know. Diana laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Believe me, I know. They took your USB drive. I know that too. Was it important? She looked up at him, this stranger she'd just tied her fate to, and decided he deserved the truth. It was everything. Every piece of evidence I had against Daniel. My insurance policy. My leverage. And now the Chongryong faction has it. Minjun was silent for a long moment, processing. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down on the floor beside her. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could feel his presence. A wall between them and the rest of the world. We're quite the pair, he said finally. You've lost your evidence. I've lost my security. My penthouse looks like a war zone. And somewhere out there, both the Chongryong faction and your ex-husband now know exactly where to find us. I'm sorry, Diana whispered. I should have run when they told me to. Now I've made everything worse. Actually, you saved my life. Minjun's voice was quiet but certain. I was having a panic attack behind that desk. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. Another 30 seconds, and they would have found me completely incapacitated. Whatever they planned to do to deliver their message would have succeeded. He turned his head toward her, though the visor still hid his expression. You stood up. You drew their attention. You lied convincingly enough that they believed we were worth more alive than dead. That's not making things worse. That's survival. We just signed a contract for a fake engagement, Diana said. And now I've made it real in the worst possible way. The Chongryong faction thinks we're actually together. They'll investigate. They'll find out it's not true. Then we make it true. She stared at him. What? Not actually true, Minjun clarified, pushing himself to his feet with visible effort. But convincingly true. You said 6 months. We have 48 hours to make Victor Zhao believe our engagement is legitimate enough that harming me means complications he doesn't want. How do we do that? Minjun walked to a panel on the wall that hadn't been destroyed in the attack. He pressed his palm against it, and a screen materialized. His fingers moved across it with the same precise efficiency she'd seen earlier, but now she noticed the slight tremor in his hands. "We do what every newly engaged couple does," he said. "We make it public. Social media posts. Press releases. We give the media a story they can't ignore." He pulled up several news sites, entertainment blogs. Korean-American translator wins the heart of Seoul's most reclusive billionaire. It's romantic. It's unexpected. It's exactly the kind of story that goes viral. You're talking about using the media as a shield. I'm talking about using everything we have as a shield. He turned to face her fully. "You need protection from Daniel Osei. I need credibility with my board and a deterrent against the Chongryong faction. We can give each other both, but only if we commit completely. No half measures. No hesitation." Diana stood up, brushing plaster dust from her ruined dress. Her hands were still shaking, but her mind was clearing. She'd spent 6 months hiding. Maybe Minjun was right. Maybe the best way to survive wasn't to hide at all. "What do we do first?" she asked. "First, we get you new clothes. Then we call my publicist." Then he stopped, tilted his head. "You're bleeding." She looked down. A piece of glass from the window had sliced across her forearm. Not deep, but enough that blood was trickling down to her wrist. She hadn't even felt it happen. Minjun immediately stepped back, his breathing changing again. "The first aid kit is in the bathroom. East wing. Second door on the left." "I can't. I'm sorry, I can't help with that." "It's okay," Diana said quickly. "I can handle it. It's just a scratch." But he was already backing away, putting distance between himself and the sight of her blood. The trauma ran deeper than she'd realized. Not just about touch. About blood. About wounds. About everything that reminded him of the day his fiancée died in his arms. "I'll go clean up," she said gently. "Take your time." The bathroom in the East Wing was as sterile as the rest of the penthouse. White tile, chrome fixtures, everything arranged with mathematical precision. The first aid kit was exactly where he'd said it would be, stocked like a small emergency room. As Diana cleaned and bandaged her arm, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her hair was a mess, her dress torn and bloodstained, her makeup smeared from rain and fear. She looked like someone who'd barely survived a disaster, which, she supposed, she had. Her phone buzzed again. Despite everything, Daniel was still texting. "Your apartment is empty, Day? Where are you hiding? Don't worry. I'll find you. I always do." She wanted to throw the phone against the wall, wanted to scream, but that wouldn't solve anything. Daniel had been hunting her for 6 months. He wouldn't stop just because she'd found someone to stand beside her, unless she gave him a reason to stop. Diana looked at her reflection again, at the woman who'd kissed a stranger through a visor, who'd stared down armed intruders, who'd claimed to be engaged to a man she'd known for less than an hour. Maybe that woman was braver than she'd given herself credit for. She opened her phone's camera, took a photo of herself in the bathroom mirror, messy and bloodied and defiant. Then she opened her social media, accounts she hadn't touched in 6 months for fear Daniel would trace them. And she posted the photo with a caption. "Sometimes the worst nights lead to the best decisions. Soul, you're full of surprises. Vague enough to mean nothing. Specific enough that Daniel would see it. Would know she wasn't cowering anymore. Let him come. This time, she wouldn't be alone." When she returned to the main room, Minjun had changed clothes. No more suit. Now he wore black pants and a simple gray sweater. The visor remained, but somehow the casual clothes made him seem more human. Less like an untouchable billionaire and more like a man who was just as scared as she was. "I called my assistant," he said. "Jiwoo will be here in 20 minutes with his team. They'll secure the penthouse, repair the windows, and sweep for surveillance devices. The Chongryong faction may have planted something during the attack." "Jiwoo, is that the cousin you mentioned?" "Yes. He's been handling the physical aspects of running Kong Industries for the last 12 years. Meetings I can't attend, site visits, networking events. He's the face of the company when I can't be." There was something in Minjun's tone. Not quite trust, not quite suspicion, just careful neutrality. "You don't sound entirely comfortable with that," Diana observed. "Jiwoo wants what's best for the company, but his definition of best and mine don't always align. He thinks I should sell to the Chongryong faction, take the money, step away, let someone else deal with the pressure." Minjun walked to the window, careful to avoid the broken glass. "He doesn't understand that this company is all I have. It's the only thing I've built that can't be taken away by fear or trauma or panic attacks." If you're wondering whether Diana can really trust Minjun, drop a comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because this story is about to get even more complicated. Jiwoo arrived exactly 20 minutes later with a team of 6 people. He was younger than Diana expected, maybe 30, with sharp features and expensive casual wear that screamed old money. His eyes went immediately to Min Jun, scanning him for injuries, then shifted to Diana with undisguised curiosity. "Hyung," he said in Korean, then switched to English. "Are you hurt?" When the security system went offline, I thought. He stopped, noticing the broken windows, the bullet holes in the walls, the destroyed furniture. "What happened here?" "The Chongryong faction sent a message," Min Jun replied. His voice was steady now, controlled. The panic from earlier had been locked away behind that careful composure. 3 men. Military-grade equipment. They disabled the building's alarms before they came in. Ji-woo's face darkened. "I told you we needed to upgrade security. I told you the old systems weren't sufficient. But you insisted." "This isn't about the systems," Min Jun cut him off. "This was inside help. Someone gave them access codes. Someone told them when I'd be home and alone. Someone who knew my schedule." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Ji-woo's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. The only people with that level of access are you, me, and 2 members of the security team. We need to investigate all of them, including me." Ji-woo's voice went cold. "Your own cousin. Especially you." Min Jun didn't flinch. "You've been pushing for the merger with Chongryong for months. You've made it clear you think I'm being unreasonable. So yes, I need to verify you weren't involved." Diana watched the exchange with growing unease. She didn't need to understand family dynamics to recognize the tension between these 2 men. This wasn't new. This was years of resentment finally boiling over. Ji-woo turned his attention to her, and his expression shifted from anger to confusion. "And who is this? Why is there a woman in your penthouse, Hyung? You don't do people, remember? You barely tolerate me." "This is Diana Patrick," Min Jun said before she could answer. "My fiancée." The room went silent. Even the security team stopped working to stare. Ji-woo laughed. Actually laughed. "You're what? Hyung, did you hit your head during the attack? You don't date. You don't socialize. You certainly don't get engaged to strange women who appear out of nowhere." "Strange women who saved my life tonight," Min Jun corrected. "The Chongryong operatives were going to kill me." Diana intervened. "Convinced them I was worth more alive because of our connection." "Our fake connection," Ji-woo said flatly. "Because that's what this is, right? Some desperate play to make the board think you're stable enough to run the company." "It's real enough," Diana said, stepping forward. She'd had enough of being discussed like she wasn't in the room. "We got engaged tonight. Before the attack. And yes, it's sudden. Yes, it's unexpected. But I'm not going anywhere, so you might as well get used to seeing me around." Ji-woo studied her with the intensity of someone trying to solve a complex equation. "You're American. Korean American, I'm guessing from your name. How did you meet my cousin? He never leaves this building." "Art auction," Diana lied smoothly. "In New York. 6 months ago. We stayed in touch. Video calls. Messages. Tonight was supposed to be our first real date in Seoul. Instead, we got assassins crashing through the windows." "Convenient story." "True story," Min Jun said. His tone allowed no argument. "Ji-woo, I need you to coordinate with the media team. We're announcing the engagement tomorrow morning. Press release. Photos. I want every major outlet in Seoul running the story by noon." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious. The Chongryong faction needs to understand that I'm not isolated anymore. That I have connections, support, reasons to fight back instead of surrender." Ji-woo looked between them, and Diana saw the moment he made his calculation. Whatever he thought about the engagement, whatever suspicions he had, he wasn't going to challenge Min Jun publicly. "Fine," he said. "I'll handle it. But Hyung, if this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you." He left, taking most of the security team with him. Only 2 remained to finish securing the penthouse. Min Jun waited until the elevator doors closed before he turned to Diana. "That went well." "He hates me," she said. "He doesn't know you well enough to hate you. He's suspicious. That's different. You think he might be working with the Chongryong faction." It wasn't a question. She'd heard the accusation in Min Jun's voice earlier. "I think someone close to me betrayed my trust," Min Jun said carefully. "Ji-woo is the most obvious suspect. He has motive, means, and opportunity. But I've known him his entire life. We grew up together. He was there the night Soo-young died. He helped me build these walls around myself because he understood why I needed them." "People change," Diana said softly. "Especially when there's money and power involved." "I know." Min Jun's shoulders sagged slightly, exhaustion finally showing through. "I just hoped he wasn't one of them." Diana understood that hope. She'd hoped Daniel would change too. Hoped the man she married was still in there somewhere, buried under the violence and crime. She'd been wrong. "We should rest," she said. It's almost 2 in the morning. Tomorrow we have to convince the entire world we're madly in love. That's going to take energy. Minjun nodded. The guest wing is through that door. Bedroom, bathroom, everything you need. I had it prepared earlier while you were cleaning up. Prepared? You mean you had someone stock it for me? I had someone stock it weeks ago, he admitted. When I first considered this arrangement. I've been planning how to solve my board problem for months. You walking into my elevator just accelerated the timeline. So this wasn't impulse. This was strategy. Careful, calculated strategy from a man who'd learned to plan everything, because spontaneity meant vulnerability. Thank you, Diana said. For the room. For the protection. For not calling those men's bluff when I claimed to be your fiancé. Thank you for claiming it in the first place. Minjun turned toward his own wing of the penthouse. And Diana? About earlier. When you kissed me. In the elevator. She tensed, waiting for anger or accusation or demands that she never do it again. It was the first time anyone's touched me in 12 years, he said quietly. And I didn't die? That might not seem like much, but to me, it was everything. So thank you for that too. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into his private wing and leaving her alone in the destroyed penthouse. Diana stood there for a long moment, processing everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. She'd run from Daniel's men, kissed a stranger through a visor, signed a contract for a fake engagement, faced down armed intruders, lost her only evidence against the Osei syndicate, and somehow ended up exactly where she needed to be, or maybe where she was supposed to be. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel. But this time, she didn't feel the familiar spike of fear. This time, she felt something different. Anger. He'd chased her across the Pacific, driven her from her home, her life, everything she'd built. Made her into a ghost because he couldn't stand the idea of her being free. Well, she was done being a ghost. Diana opened the text. Daniel's message was longer this time, more detailed. I know you're in Gangnam. High-end district. You always did have expensive taste. Remember when I bought you that penthouse view in Santa Monica? You said you'd never leave. But you did. You always do. Running is what you're good at, Day. But I'm better at finding you. She read it twice, analyzing every word like she was decoding a threat assessment. Because that's what it was. Daniel mapping her location through process of elimination. He knew Seoul. Probably had contacts here through the Osei Syndicate's international operations. But he didn't know about Minjun. Didn't know she'd found protection in the last place he'd think to look. She typed out a response, deleted it, typed again. Finally settled on something simple. I'm not running anymore. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came within seconds. Then you're dying. Diana's hands shook, but she forced herself to put the phone down. Engaging with Daniel was what he wanted. Fear was his currency. Every text, every threat, every promise of violence was designed to keep her off balance and desperate. She walked to the windows that weren't broken, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. Somewhere in those millions of lights, Daniel was hunting her. And somewhere in those same lights, the Chongryong faction was planning their next move against Minjun. Two separate threats that had somehow collided into one impossible situation. The guest wing was immaculate. Minimalist furniture in soft grays and whites. A bed that looked like it had never been slept in. A bathroom with more amenities than most luxury hotels. But it was the small details that caught her attention. Fresh flowers in a vase on the dresser. Art books stacked on the nightstand. A closet already filled with women's clothes in her exact size. Minjun had been thorough in his preparation. She showered, washing away the glass dust and blood and fear, then wrapped herself in the plush robe hanging on the bathroom door. When she emerged, she found a tablet on the bed with a note in precise handwriting. Tomorrow's schedule. Review and let me know if you need anything changed. Sleep well. MJ. The tablet showed a detailed timeline. 7 a.m. Breakfast, separate, unless you prefer together. 8 a.m. Hair and makeup team arrives. 9:30 a.m. Photographer for engagement announcement. 11 a.m. Press release goes live. 12 p.m. First interview, Seoul Daily Business. 2 p.m. Lunch at Signal, public appearance, expect paparazzi. 4 p.m. Meeting with lawyers, prenuptial agreement discussion. 6 p.m. Dinner with Jiwoo and board members. Every minute accounted for. Every interaction planned. This was how Minjun lived his life, she realized. Structured. Controlled. Every variable managed because chaos meant vulnerability. She understood that more than he knew. Diana barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face. Or the armed intruders swinging through the windows. Or Minjun's trembling hands as he tried to maintain composure while falling apart inside. At 6:30, She gave up and got dressed in clothes from the mysteriously stocked closet. Whoever had done the shopping had excellent taste. The blouse was silk, the pants tailored, everything fit perfectly. She found Minjun in the kitchen at exactly 7. He'd traded the visor for a different one, this one more subtle, tinted like high-end sunglasses. He was making coffee with the same precise movements he brought to everything else. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "I heard you moving around. Coffee, please." She sat at the counter, maintaining the distance he seemed to need. I reviewed the schedule. It's intense. It has to be. By tonight, every major outlet in Seoul needs to believe our engagement is real. That means appearances, interviews, public displays of affection. He poured her coffee, sliding the cup across the counter rather than handing it to her directly. "Are you comfortable with that?" "Which part? The lying or the affection?" "Both." Diana wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I spent 3 years pretending I didn't know my husband was a criminal. I'm excellent at lying. The affection might be harder. We'll keep it minimal. Hand-holding, standing close, nothing that crosses boundaries." Minjun finally turned to face her. Even with the tinted visor, she could see the exhaustion around his eyes. He hadn't slept either. "The photographer will take engagement photos. Traditional poses. We'll choose the ones that look most authentic. And if someone asks how you proposed, I'll say it was private. Romantic. In this penthouse after you agreed to help me face my fears." He paused. "Which is technically true. You did help me face them. Just not in the way the story implies." "The best lies are built on truth," Diana said quietly. "Exactly." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. Outside, Seoul was waking up, the city transforming from nighttime neon to morning bustle. It was almost peaceful. Then Diana's phone rang. Unknown number. Korean area code. She answered before she could think better of it. "Hello. Diana Patrick." The voice was smooth, accented male. "We haven't been properly introduced. My name is Victor Zhao. I believe you met some of my associates last night." Her blood went cold. She looked at Minjun, mouthing Victor's name. His entire body went rigid. "Mr. Zhao," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you directly. I'm calling to apologize for the misunderstanding last night. My team was under the impression that Mr. Kong was alone. Had I known about your relationship, I would never have authorized such an aggressive approach." The lie was delivered smoothly, but Diana heard what he wasn't saying. He was testing her, seeing if the engagement story would hold up under pressure. "Your team put bullets through his windows," she said. "That's more than aggressive. That's attempted murder. A miscommunication. I assure you, my interest is purely business. I simply want Mr. Kong to see the benefits of our merger proposal." Victor's tone shifted, becoming almost friendly. "In fact, I'd like to extend an invitation. Dinner. This Friday. You, Mr. Kong, and myself. Let's discuss this partnership in a more civilized setting." It was a trap. Obviously a trap. But refusing would make them look afraid. Minjun was shaking his head frantically, mouthing no. But Diana thought about Daniel. About 6 months of running. About how predators only respected strength. "We'd be delighted," she said. "Send the details to Minjun's assistant." "We'll see you Friday, Mr. Zhao." She hung up before he could respond. Minjun stared at her like she'd just agreed to walk into a burning building. "Are you insane? You just accepted a dinner invitation from the man who tried to kill me." "No. I accepted a dinner invitation from the man who's testing whether we're a real couple. If we'd refused, he'd know we were lying. This way we go. We present a united front. We show him we're not afraid." "I am afraid," Minjun said flatly. "That's the entire problem." Before she could answer, the penthouse elevator chimed. The hair and makeup team had arrived early, and with them, something Diana hadn't expected. A woman in an expensive suit carrying a manila envelope. "Mr. Kong," the woman said with a slight bow. "I'm Detective Park Min SEO with the Seoul Metropolitan Police. I need to ask you some questions about an incident that occurred at your building last night." Hit that like button if you think Diana just made a huge mistake accepting Victor's dinner invitation. And subscribe because things are about to get way more dangerous. Minjun's composure cracked for just a second before he rebuilt it. "Detective Park, I wasn't expecting the police to be involved. We handled the situation internally." "That's part of the problem," Detective Park said, her tone professional but firm. "A luxury high-rise in Gangnam suffered multiple gunshots and significant property damage. Building security didn't report it. You didn't report it. But our surveillance systems picked up 3 individuals rappelling down the exterior of Kong Tower at midnight. That tends to attract attention." She opened the manila envelope, spreading crime scene photos across the counter. The penthouse from last night, captured from multiple angles. The broken windows. The bullet holes. The destruction that Min Jun's people had cleaned up overnight, but couldn't completely erase. So I'll ask again, Detective Park continued. What happened here, Mr. Kong? Diana watched Min Jun carefully. She could see the calculation happening behind that tinted visor. Truth or lie? Cooperation or deflection? It was a robbery attempt, Min Jun said finally. 3 men broke in through the windows. They were after company secrets, technology patents. I activated the panic button. They realized security was coming, and they fled before taking anything. A robbery attempt. Detective Park's expression didn't change. In a building with military-grade security systems that were mysteriously offline during the exact window of the attack. And these robbers just happened to have professional rappelling equipment and military tactical gear. I can't explain their preparation. Only what happened. Can she? Detective Park turned her attention to Diana. You are Diana Patrick, she said before Min Jun could deflect. I was here during the attack. Everything Mr. Kong said is accurate. 3 men, professional equipment. They seemed to be looking for something specific, but left when the alarms activated. The alarms that were offline. Backup alarms, Diana corrected smoothly. The primary system was disabled, but the secondary system activated when Min Jun pressed the panic button. It was a good lie. Specific enough to sound true, vague enough to be hard to disprove. Detective Park made notes on a tablet. Ms. Patrick, you're American. Are you visiting Seoul? I live here. I'm a translator. Korean American. My mother was from Busan. And you were in Mr. Kang's penthouse at midnight because? The question hung in the air like a blade. Min Jun spoke before Diana could. Because she's my fiancée. We were celebrating our engagement when the attack occurred. Detective Park's eyebrows rose slightly. Your fiancé? The reclusive billionaire who hasn't been photographed with anyone in 12 years suddenly has a fiancé. People change, Min Jun said. Or they lie to cover up something more complicated. Detective Park closed her tablet. Mr. Kong, I'm going to be direct with you. This wasn't a robbery. Robberies don't involve 3 military-trained operatives with equipment that costs more than most people's annual salary. This was either corporate espionage or a targeted attack. And if you don't tell me which, I can't help you. I don't need help, Min Jun said. I need privacy to run my company and live my life. Even if that life is in danger? Especially then. Detective Park studied him for a long moment, then shifted her gaze to Diana. Something in her expression changed. Recognition, maybe. Or suspicion. Ms. Patrick, she said slowly. Have we met before? Your face is familiar. Diana's heart stopped. Federal witness testimony. Court appearances. Her face had been in databases, news articles, legal documents. If Detective Park ran her name through international law enforcement systems. I don't think so, Diana said carefully. I keep a low profile. Translators rarely make headlines. Detective Park didn't look convinced. Well, I'm sure I'll remember eventually. In the meantime, Mr. Kong, I need you to file an official report. Detail everything that was taken or damaged. Provide security footage from the backup systems. If you refuse to cooperate, I'll have to assume you're hiding something. And that never ends well. She left her card on the counter and walked to the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, Min Jun turned to Diana. She recognized you. Maybe. Or maybe she's just thorough. If she runs your name through Interpol, she'll find sealed records from my witness testimony, which means she'll know I testified against Daniel, but not the details. Federal witness protection seals most of the case files. Diana picked up the detective's card, but she'll know I'm connected to organized crime, which makes our engagement story more complicated. Or more believable, Min Jun countered. You're not some random translator. You're someone running from a dangerous man. I'm someone who needs protection from a dangerous organization. We found each other. It's almost romantic. It's almost insane. The hair and makeup team was still waiting awkwardly by the elevator. Min Jun waved them over. We'll continue this conversation later. Right now, we have an engagement to announce. The next 3 hours were a blur of photographs and primping. The photographer positioned them in carefully composed shots. Min Jun standing behind Diana, his hands hovering near her shoulders, but not quite touching. Diana looking back at him with what she hoped was adoration, but probably looked more like confusion. Both of them trying to sell a love story that didn't exist to a world that wouldn't believe it anyway. Closer, the photographer urged. Mr. Kong, can you put your hand on her shoulder? Min Jun's entire body tensed. The hand lifted, trembling slightly, then stopped an inch from making contact. I can't, he said quietly. Not today. Use the previous shots. The photographer looked frustrated, but nodded. They'd gotten enough material to work with. After the team left, Diana found Min Jun standing at the repaired windows, staring out at Seoul. The new glass was spotless, No evidence of last night's attack except for the way he stood, rigid and braced, like he was expecting it to shatter again at any moment. You did well, she said. I couldn't touch you for one photograph, he replied. How am I supposed to convince anyone we're in love if I can't even manage basic physical contact? We'll figure it out. We have to. Her phone buzzed. The press release had gone live. Within minutes, notifications started flooding in. News articles, social media posts, comments from people she'd never met, congratulating her, questioning her, demanding to know everything about the mysterious woman who'd won Kang Min-jun's heart. And somewhere in Seoul, Daniel was reading those same articles, learning her new name, learning exactly where she was hiding. Min-jun's phone rang. Ji-woo's name flashed on the screen. The board wants an emergency meeting, Ji-woo said without preamble. His voice was tight, angry. They saw the press release. They want to meet Diana. Verify this isn't some desperate stunt you're pulling to avoid the merger vote. When? Min-jun asked. Tonight, 7 p.m. Conference room. The entire board will be there, including our largest shareholders. Hyung, they're not going to go easy on either of you. They'll ask questions, dig into her background, test whether this relationship is real. We'll be ready. Will you? Ji-woo's doubt was audible. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a disaster waiting to happen. He hung up. Min-jun set his phone down carefully. The board meeting is our first real test. If we fail, they'll force the merger vote. I'll lose control of my company, and your protection disappears with it. Then we don't fail, Diana said simply. You say that like it's easy. Nothing about this is easy. But we don't have a choice. So we prepare. We practice. We become so convincing that even we start to believe it. Min-jun turned to look at her, and even through the tinted visor, she could see the question in his eyes. And if believing it becomes dangerous? If we forget where the performance ends and reality begins? Then we deal with that problem when we get to it, Diana said. Right now, we have bigger threats. Daniel, Victor Zhao, you're bored. We handle them first. And then maybe we figure out who we actually are. Underneath all the lies and fear and survival instincts. She didn't add the rest of what she was thinking. That maybe Min-jun wasn't the only one hiding behind protective barriers. That maybe she'd been so busy running from Daniel that she'd forgotten who she was before him. That maybe this fake engagement was the first honest thing either of them had done in years. The Seoul Daily Business interview happened at noon in Min-jun's office, 3 floors below the penthouse. The reporter was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper questions. Mr. Kang, you've been Seoul's most eligible bachelor for over a decade. Why announce an engagement now? Min-jun sat behind his desk, Diana in the chair beside him. They'd practiced this answer a dozen times that morning. I met Diana 6 months ago at an art auction in New York, he said. The lie rolled off his tongue smoothly now. She was translating for a Korean collector. I was bidding remotely. There was a technical issue with my connection, and she stepped in to help facilitate the communication. We started talking afterward. Video calls at first, then messages. Then I realized I didn't want to imagine my life without her voice in it. It was romantic, believable, completely fabricated. The reporter turned to Diana. Ms. Patrick, what was it about Mr. Kang that made you say yes to his proposal? This was her part. They'd rehearsed this too. He sees me, Diana said, and as she spoke, she realized some of it was true. Not the surface things. Not my appearance or my background. He sees who I am underneath. And he let me see him too. That vulnerability, that trust, it's rare. When you find it, you hold on to it. Even though he famously doesn't make public appearances, even though your relationship will be conducted largely in private, especially because of that. I'm not interested in a public romance. I want something real. Something that matters when the cameras aren't watching. The reporter made notes. There are rumors that this engagement is a strategic move. That Mr. Kang is using you to appear more stable to his board of directors. Min-jun's jaw tightened. People will always create rumors when they don't understand something. Diana and I don't owe anyone an explanation for our relationship. We owe each other honesty and respect. That's what matters. And the timing? Right as the Chongryong faction is pushing for a merger? Coincidental timing doesn't invalidate genuine feelings, Diana interjected. We fell in love on our own timeline. The business pressure just made Min-jun realize he didn't want to waste any more time. It was a good deflection. The reporter seemed satisfied, moving on to softer questions about wedding plans and future children. When the interview ended, Min-jun stood and offered his hand to Diana. She took it, and even through his glove, she felt him flinch at the contact. But he held on. For the reporter's benefit. For the camera that was still recording. For the performance. Lunch at Signal was exactly as awkward as expected. The restaurant was on the 81st floor of Latte World Tower, all floor-to-ceiling windows and wealthy patrons trying not to stare at Seoul's newest celebrity couple. They sat at a corner table, menus open but barely looked at. Around them, smartphones were pointed in their direction, capturing photos and videos that would be on social media before their food arrived. "This is surreal," Diana murmured. "Welcome to my nightmare," Min-jun replied. "Except usually I'm not here. Usually Ji-woo handles these appearances. How do you run a company without ever being seen?" "Very carefully. I built a reputation for being eccentric but brilliant. The board tolerates my absence because the stock price keeps rising. But tolerance has limits." He paused as the waiter approached. "They're testing those limits now." They ordered without really tasting what they chose. The food came and went. They made small talk for the cameras, laughed at appropriate moments, played their roles perfectly. But underneath the performance, Diana felt the weight of what they'd created. This lie that was becoming more real with every passing hour. This fake engagement that was somehow the most honest relationship either of them had in years. Min-jun's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted. Daniel Osei just landed in Seoul. Diana's fork clattered against her plate. "How do you know?" "I have people monitoring international arrivals. Anyone connected to the Osei syndicate gets flagged." He showed her his phone. A photo of Daniel walking through Incheon Airport, looking exactly as she remembered. Tall, handsome, dangerous. He brought 3 associates with him. "That's not a social visit." "He's coming for me." "Yes, but he doesn't know where you are yet. The press coverage this morning mentioned you're living in Gangnam, but didn't specify the building. We have maybe 24 hours before he narrows down your location. Then we use those 24 hours to prepare." Diana forced herself to pick up her fork again, to continue the performance even though her hands were shaking. "What do? We accelerate the timeline. The board meeting tonight becomes more than just verification of our engagement. It becomes a public declaration that you're under my protection, that anyone who touches you answers to Kong Industries and its considerable resources." Will that be enough to stop Daniel? It'll make him think twice. The Osei syndicate operates in shadows. Public attention is their enemy. If harming you means drawing that attention, he might reconsider his approach. Or he might decide it's worth the risk. Min-jun reached across the table, and this time when his gloved hand covered hers, he didn't flinch. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Together." The word hung between them. Together. Like they were actually a team instead of 2 desperate people clinging to each other in the storm. Maybe that's what partnerships were anyway. Mutual survival, dressed up as devotion. They left the restaurant to a crowd of photographers and reporters. Questions shouted from every direction. When was the wedding? Where would they honeymoon? Was she pregnant? Did his family approve? Min-jun kept his hand on the small of Diana's back, guiding her through the chaos. She could feel the tremor in his touch, the effort it took him to maintain contact in the midst of so many people. But he didn't let go. Not until they were in his car, windows tinted, door closed against the world. Then he pulled his hand back like he'd been burned, pressing it against his chest and breathing hard. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "I just need a moment." "Take all the time you need," Diana said softly. "You did amazing out there. I touched you in public. For 5 minutes. That's not amazing. That's barely functional. It's more than you've done in 12 years. That's not nothing, Min-jun." He was quiet for a long moment, his breathing gradually slowing. "My therapist used to say that healing isn't linear. That some days I'd be better and some days I'd be worse. I stopped seeing her because I didn't want to hear that anymore. I wanted a fix, a cure, a way to go back to who I was before. And now I'm starting to think maybe I don't want to go back. Maybe I just want to go forward, even if it's terrifying." The car pulled into Kong Tower's underground garage. Private entrance. No cameras. No people. They rode the elevator in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the penthouse, Ji-woo was waiting with a tablet and a grim expression. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. Detective Park ran Diana's name through Interpol. She knows about the witness testimony. She knows about Daniel Osei. And she's asking questions about why a woman fleeing organized crime would suddenly be engaged to one of Seoul's wealthiest businessmen. Comment below if you think the detective is going to expose their fake engagement. Don't forget to like and subscribe because you need to see what happens at the board meeting tonight. The conference room on the 50th floor of Kong Tower was designed to intimidate. A massive table made from a single piece of dark wood. Leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Seoul that reminded everyone in the room exactly how high they'd climbed and how far they could fall. 12 board members sat around that table, and every single one of them looked at Diana like she was a problem that needed solving. Min-jun sat at the head of the table, Diana beside him. Ji-woo was across from them, his expression carefully neutral. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "Let's begin," said the oldest board member, a man Min-jun had introduced as Chairman Lee. "Mr. Kong, we've reviewed your engagement announcement. While we're pleased you're taking steps toward a more public presence, we have concerns about the timing and circumstances." "What concerns?" Min-jun asked. His voice was steady, but Diana could see his fingers drumming against his thigh beneath the table. A nervous tick he was trying to hide. "Ms. Patrick appears in your life mere hours before you announce an engagement. She has no social media presence in Seoul, no documented history with you, and according to Detective Park's inquiry, she's connected to international criminal investigations." Chairman Lee's gaze shifted to Diana. "Would you care to explain?" Every instinct told Diana to run, to make excuses, to hide behind whatever story would get her out of this room fastest. But she'd spent 6 months running. She was tired. "I testified against my ex-husband in a federal racketeering case," she said, her voice clear and firm. "Daniel Osei. He runs the Osei Syndicate's operations in Los Angeles. When the case fell apart due to corruption and intimidation, he came after me. I fled to Seoul using my mother's citizenship. I've been hiding here for 6 months." The board members exchanged glances. This was worse than they'd expected. "And Mr. Kong?" Another board member asked. "How does he factor into your situation?" "I met him 3 days ago," Diana said. "By accident. I was running from Daniel's people when I encountered Min-jun. He offered me protection in exchange for helping him appear more stable and accessible to this board. It was a business arrangement. A contract." She could feel Min-jun tense beside her. They'd agreed to lie, to maintain the love story. But Diana was done with lies. "Was?" Chairman Lee repeated. Past tense. "Yes." Diana looked at Min-jun, and something in her chest tightened. Because somewhere between signing that contract and sitting in this room, something changed. "I don't know when exactly. Maybe it was when he showed me his escape plan and I realized he understood fear the same way I do. Maybe it was when he stood beside me at that restaurant even though crowds make him physically ill. Maybe it was when he touched me in public despite 12 years of trauma telling him not to." She turned back to the board. "You want to know if this engagement is real? I don't know. We barely know each other. We're both running from different demons. But what I do know is that Min-jun is the first person in 6 months who's made me feel like maybe I deserve to stop running. Like maybe I'm worth protecting. And if you think that's not real just because it happened fast, then you don't understand what it's like to be desperate and broken and suddenly find someone who speaks your language." The room was silent. Chairman Lee studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Min-jun. "And you? Do you share Ms. Patrick's sentiments?" Min-jun was quiet for so long Diana thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, and his voice was different. Raw, honest. 12 years ago, I lost Soo Young to violence I couldn't prevent. I've spent every day since building walls between myself and the world because I convinced myself that distance equals safety. But Diana walked through those walls like they didn't exist. She kissed me through a visor in an elevator and didn't apologize for it. She stood between me and armed intruders. She called herself my fiancée to save my life before we'd even agreed to the arrangement." He paused. "I don't know if what we have is love, but I know it's real. And I know I'd rather face whatever comes next with her beside me than hide alone in my penthouse for another 12 years. Ji-woo's expression had shifted. The suspicion was still there, but something else had joined it. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. Chairman Lee stood. "The board will take a 15-minute recess to discuss." They filed out, leaving Diana and Min-jun alone in the conference room. "You told them the truth," Min-jun said. "I'm tired of lying. Even when the lies are safer. They might reject you. Reject us. Force the merger vote. Then they do. But at least they'll do it knowing who we actually are." Min-jun turned to face her fully. Slowly, carefully, he reached up and removed the tinted visor. Diana had imagined his face a dozen different ways. Scarred maybe. Burned. Something that explained why he hid. But he was just a man. Handsome in a quiet way. Dark eyes that had seen too much. A jaw tight with tension. Vulnerable and human and real. "This is me," he said quietly. "No barriers. No protection. Just me." Diana reached out, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she touched his cheek. His skin was warm. He flinched but didn't retreat. "Thank you," she whispered. The door opened. The board returned. Chairman Lee looked at them, and for the first time since the meeting began, he smiled. "The board has made its decision. We approve of this engagement. Conditionally." "What conditions?" Min-jun asked, his voice slightly unsteady from Diana's touch. "You make 1 public appearance per week for the next 6 months. Corporate events. Charity galas. Interviews. You show this board and our shareholders that you're capable of leading this company into the future. Do that, and we'll support you against any merger attempts. And if we fail, then the Chongryong faction wins. But somehow, Chairman Li looked between them. I don't think you will. The meeting ended. The board members left. Jiwoo lingered by the door. Hyung, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I thought you were making a desperate mistake. But watching you two in there, maybe you found exactly what you both needed. After he left, Minjun and Diana stood alone in the conference room, soul glittering below them. We have 6 months to make this work, Minjun said. 6 months to convince everyone it's real. Or to figure out if it actually is. Diana's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news, Day? Very impressive. Kong Minjun, billionaire. Protection. Resources. You've upgraded for me. But here's the thing about upgrades. They're still just new versions of the same thing. And I always find a way to reclaim what's mine. See you soon. D. She showed the text to Minjun. He's threatening you, Minjun said. He's threatening us. Then he doesn't understand what he's up against. Minjun took her hand, properly this time. No gloves, no barriers. Because we're not facing him separately. We're facing him together. The lights of Seoul stretched out before them, endless and bright. Somewhere in those lights, Daniel was planning his next move. Victor Zhao was preparing for Friday's dinner. Detective Park was building her investigation. But for the first time in 6 months, Diana wasn't afraid. Because she wasn't alone anymore. The penthouse elevator doors opened behind them. Security team entering to escort them back upstairs. Back to their separate wings and careful boundaries. Tomorrow, Minjun said as they stepped into the elevator. We start preparing for Victor's dinner. And for whatever Daniel has planned. Together, Diana confirmed. The elevator doors closed. And somewhere in Seoul's neon-lit night, 3 separate storms were gathering. Daniel Osei, hunting the woman who'd escaped him. Victor Zhao, plotting his next move to acquire Kong Industries. And Detective Park, piecing together a puzzle that didn't quite fit. But that's a story for another time. If you want to see what happens when Daniel and Diana finally come face to face, when Victor's dinner becomes a deadly game, and when Minjun has to choose between his company and the woman who taught him how to live again, you need to be here for part 2. Hit that subscribe button. Smash the like.